Hi everyone, in this tutorial we're going to learn how to create a button that has some complex properties like multiple icons and states that we can change using the component properties like filled and outlined, hover states for each, and also we're gonna create some variants and we're gonna be able to edit those variants with component properties. So we can even change button text like this. We can toggle layers visibilities with toggle switches in the component properties, and also we're gonna create variants that lets us change the icon instances separately like this. So let's get started. I'm keeping the instructions on screen again. Maybe this way, as I said, it can be more helpful for some designers who likes to follow the instructions in both forms. We're gonna start with creating our button component, and in order to do that, following the instructions, I'm gonna create a rectangle element and change its corner radius to 8 pixels and its color to button filled BG style. And I'm gonna create a text element as suggested here. We don't need to worry about the size of the rectangle, right? We're gonna edit the size with the auto layout properties. So I'm creating the text element with the font Inter, and size is going to be 16 pixels. Font weight is going to be black, and the color is going to be button filled elements from the styles. And I'm gonna create the auto layout by Shift A, and with settings suggested, horizontal gap 4, and the vertical padding is going to be 10. And the next step is turning our button frame to a component and changing its name, right? So the next step is creating our icon components. So I'm copying one of the static elements and turn it into a component and adding a variant to create an outlined version of it. Let's change the property name to style, and in the outlined version or variant, after selecting the icon vector element, I'm deleting the fill and adding a stroke with the same color it has, right? So I'm following the same steps for each icon. So we're going to continue with creating button components variants with icons. I'm going to drag an instance of an icon to my button component, and thanks to the auto layout, it's going to be placed in a proper way. So we need to add a Boolean property now to be able to toggle icons visibility on and off, right? In order to do that, I'm going to select the button component and add the Boolean property first. I'm going to name it as icon, and I'll leave the default value at true. After creating the Boolean property, now I need to assign a layer to it to be able to toggle its visibility. So after selecting my icon component layer, I'm gonna go to the layer panel at the right, and this icon is the only one we have right now. I'm gonna click that, and as you see, the Boolean property symbol here and a detach icon next to it in case we want to detach that Boolean property. I'm going to drag an instance of my button component to test it, and as you see at the right panel, I have a toggle switch that lets me toggle on and off. As the instructions suggest, in order to be able to change the icon instance within the button component, we need to create an instance swap property for the button component. So in order to do that, I'm going to click the plus button after selecting the button component next to the properties, and I'm going to choose instance swap, and I'm going to name it icon. I'm going to pick an instance from the icons folder here, as I gathered my icons in a frame that is called icons. That lets me to gather my icons in a folder like this. So I'm gonna click that. As default icon, I'm gonna choose the user, and I'm gonna click create property. We need to assign our icon component to the instance swap property that we've just created in order to be able to change the icon instance from our button component, right? So in order to assign the instance swap property, I need to select the icon component in my button. As I see it, I guess it's unfortunately a vector, so I'm gonna delete it and make sure that I'm dragging an instance of the icon component to my button component. So I'm doing that. As I see it, yeah, it is a component instance. Okay, so now I can apply instance swap property to my icon component in the button, since the icon is the only one that I've just created. It's the only one that appears in the dropdown, so I'm assigning to it. And I have an instance of my button component here. Now, as you see, I can just change thanks to the instance swap property. I can actually also change it to be filled or outlined. I can even copy and paste another icon, change its color, turn it into a component, add a new variant to it, as I did in the for the other icons. And in the new variant, delete the field and edit the stroke. Now I need to be able to see the new settings icon in the instances. We can also create another instance property for toggling our text element on and off in our button component, right? As always, first we need to add the property. Oh, as I see it, or has icon. Oh yeah, we need to delete the static vector and add our icon component from scratch. Or has icon property is not assigned to the icon component, right? So in order to do that, we're gonna reassign has icon property from the layer panel. So let's test it in the instance. Yeah. So to be able to do that toggling on and off with the text element that our button has, first I need to add another Boolean property to our button component and select Boolean here. Let's name it as text. By default, I'm leaving it true. And the next step is selecting my text element and assigning it to the Boolean has text property I just created, right? Testing it on the instance of my button component. So I can toggle the visibility of my text element here, right? So in order to demonstrate, I'm gonna add text property that lets us change the button text from the right side panel. So in order to do that, as always, first I need to add the required property to my component, which is going to be text this time. I'm gonna name it to something descriptive like button text, and as default value I'm gonna type in text, type in button text. I'm gonna click create property. As always, we need to, as we see the warning here, this brand new button text property has not been used within component with any elements. So we need to fix that by assigning that property to an element that our component has. This time I need to go to the text section, as my text layer already has a Boolean property. As you see, here is the text that my button has. I'm gonna click the arrow next to it and assign it to the only property that appears, button text. And actually I can just edit the default value to be button. So that way I'm going to be able to change the button text here. It might not be that necessary, but I want to include for demonstration purposes. So let's start creating other variants of our button, starting from the hover. So I'm selecting the button component, pressing the plus button to create a new variant. I'm going to name the property state. And since our second variant is going to be hover, I'm naming it accordingly, and selecting the background of the hover variant. I'm changing its background color to button hover BG and completing that step. And another variant we're going to create is going to be outline style of our button. So I'm selecting the button component from the properties panel. I'm clicking the plus button and adding a new variant, naming the property style and value to filled, because we want filled to be and then selecting the default field style. I'm pressing the plus button below it to create a variant that looks exactly the same, and renaming its style to outlined. As you see, Figma also warns me about there's a conflict because there's already a component variant with the very same name. So I'm renaming this to outlined. And next I need to delete the background and create a stroke for my button, right? So I'm deleting the background fill and adding a stroke with the same color, making it 2 pixels. I'm selecting both of the elements and under the section selecting colors, changing the colors of the elements to button filled BG. So the next step is creating the outline buttons hover state, right? In order to create another variant that has the exact same look that outlined default button has, after selecting the default outline button, clicking the plus button below it, and I have another variant as a clone of it and changing its state to hover. And then the next step is changing all the colors that button has to hover BG. So now I can test all the styles and states in an instance. So let's change state to hover and style to outlined. As you see, all our variants can be previewed within an instance. As I mentioned in the instructions, I wanted to include this particular step to demonstrate how difficult it can be to include another property after creating the variants of the element, in this case other button variants. I'm gonna try to add another icon instance which is going to be placed at the right, and we're gonna copy that right icon element to all of the other button variants starting from the default. So I'm gonna, after selecting my icon in the button, I'm gonna duplicate it, and with Alt right arrow, I'm gonna take it to the right. As you see, in an instance of my button component, I cannot see the right icon yet. In order to see that, I need to go to the default field variant. But as I said, in other variants, you cannot see the right icon component. We can start adding new properties to our button component in order to be able to edit the right icon instance separately. So after selecting my button component, I'm gonna click the plus button next to the properties as always, and I'm gonna need a new Boolean property, which is going to be has right icon. And I'm gonna leave the default true because I want to be able to see and change in other variants easily when I paste it into other variants of my button component. But we can always edit that default value by selecting the property at the right side panel. So I'm gonna click the create property button, and as always, next thing we need to do is assigning the relevant layer to that property we just created, which is going to be, in this case, the right icon layer. But as you see, because we duplicated it from the left icon element, it already has a Boolean property that's assigned to it. So I'm gonna detach it by clicking the detach property and then assign it to the new has right icon Boolean property. Now let's test it in an instance. But first I need to, as we haven't pasted that right icon element to all other variants, I need to test this in the default and field variant, right? So as you see, I can just toggle it visibly on and off by pressing the toggle switch next to the has right icon property. Actually, in order to avoid any confusion or keep things clear, I can just rename the has icon property to has left icon, right? So right now we are not able to change our right icon separately, right? We only have one instance swap property which changes both of the icons. In order to be able to change the right icon separately, we need to use another icons frame or folder. So what I'm going to do is just cloning this icons frame and renaming that icons right, and after that I'm gonna select the button component and add a new instance swap property, which is going to be icon right. And as instance, as I cloned my icons frame, I'm going to select an icon from the icons right, and that way I complete the creating an instance swap property separately for the right icon. So as always, next step is selecting our required element and assigning it to the required property, basically. So as you see, our parent component already attached to the icon instance swap. So I'm gonna click the detach property button there. I'm gonna, yeah, since I detached it from the icon instance swap, I'm gonna reassign it to icon right, and that way hopefully I'm gonna be able to change both icons independently. Yeah, as you see, you're able to change both of the icons independently. Our next step is actually we added the icon at the right for demonstrating what happens if you need to add another element to a component that has multiple states. I'm going to select the icon at the right and click in the other variants. I'm going to paste it to them. So what I like about component variants, it pastes selected elements to the exact same place in the variant you copy it from, but we need to change its color to the proper one. I'm going to paste it also to last variant and change its color to the style that matches the other elements. And now I can test my icons and other elements in an instance. So let's change the state to hover. As you see, toggle elements visibilities on and off, and change the icons. Change the style also. If you want, we can also add a test frame and my button instance there. And in prototype mode, I can just drag an interaction from the default state to hover state and select while hovering, and add a dissolve animation that has duration of 100 milliseconds or something. Do the same for the outline style, test it. As you see, it works for the field style. Let's see it for the outline style. As you see, also outline the variants hover is working as we defined in the prototype. Hope you liked the tutorial. See you in the next one.